Hello everybody, Tim Teacher here. Today we're going to finish our reading of Obi Gerbil on the Loose by lDelaney. Last week, right, Obi had found out why Tad was not feeding her. There had been a small note, but Rachel had not put the note under something, right, so that it got weighted down, and it blew off the table into the crevice between the refrigerator and the counter. And so Tad, right, had not seen the note, so that was why Obi had not been fed. Today we're going to finish the story. We are beginning with chapter 27, Foiled Again. Gasping for breath, Obi picked herself up and raced to the back of the dark crevice. Sweetie Smoochkin sprinted over and thrust her paw in at Obi, but Obi was too far into the crevice for the cat's paw to reach her. Shaken up by what had just happened, Obi was trembling and her legs felt all wobbly. She glanced around the crevice for something to sit on. She saw the small rubber ball and plopped herself down on it. Sweetie Smoochkins tried again and again to strike Obi with her paw. Then Honeybuns gave it a shot. Then Sugar Smacks tried. Then Sweetie Smoochkins gave it another valiant effort. Obi, meanwhile, sat on the small red ball and tried to see what Tad was doing. Since the cats were blocking her view, Obi had to really strain her neck to see the boy. Having returned from the basement, Tad now stood by the kitchen table, putting new batteries into the CD player. He had not yet discovered Rachel's note. Using the knife, Tad screwed the lid to the battery compartment back onto the CD player. He slipped his earphones back on over his ears and pushed the play button on the CD player. Obi held her breath. Now what's the problem? Tad groaned, frowning in exasperation at the CD player. He looked as if he was about to fling the CD player across the room. Tad pushed the button that flipped open the top of the CD player. He stared in amazement at the folded pink note that was stuck there. Huh? He blurted out. How did this get here? Tad removed the note. Obi's heart thumped wildly with excitement. At long last, Tad was going to find out about her. But Tad did not unfold the note. Instead, the boy picked up the CD that lay on the kitchen table. It was Rachel's CD, the one Obi had dropped on the table when she fled. Without even looking at the disc, Tad inserted it into the CD player. Evidently, he thought it was his CD, the one he had been listening to. He pushed the play button again. While he waited for his music to start playing, Tad picked up Rachel's note and began to unfold it. The loud, anguished, tortured cry that followed was like no other sound Obi had ever heard before. Ah! Tad roared, yanking the earphones from his ears and dropping the note. I hate this music. Tad's scream startled the cats. They leaped high into the air. With frightened meows, they dashed out of the kitchen. Mac let out a bark. My poor ears, wailed Tad as he took the disc out of his CD player. He peered at the label. This isn't my CD, he cried. What's going on? Tad picked up the CD case that was on top of Rachel's stack of CDs. He popped it open. Here's my CD, he said. This is so weird. He inserted his CD into the CD player and pushed the play button again. Ah, that's better, he sighed with relief. While Tad might have been relieved, Obi sure was not. She was devastated. When Tad screamed, he had dropped Rachel's note onto the floor. Obi had come so close to having Tad read the note, only to be foiled again. Disheartened, she plopped down on the small rubber ball and buried her face in her paws. But then she heard Tad say, Now, where did that piece of paper go? Obi stood up. In the kitchen, she saw Tad bend over, searching the floor for Rachel's note. Oh, here it is, he said, picking up the small piece of pink paper. It had fallen under the kitchen table. He stood and opened the note and read it to himself. Oh my God, he gasped. That poor little critter, all this time with no food. I need to feed Obi right this second. Obi, hearing this, nearly let out a whoop of joy. She was so thrilled, so elated. Her plan had worked. Tad now knew about her and was going to feed her. Tad disappeared into the kitchen pantry. He reappeared a moment later, carrying a small plastic bag. And not just any bag, it was the bag of gerbil food. Better still, in his hand, Tad held a box of yummy yum yogurt puffballs. Obie watched in delight as Tad headed for the hallway to go upstairs to Rachel's bedroom. When the boy walked past the crevice, Obie wanted to cheer, but then Obie thought of something dreadful. Oh my gosh! If Tad finds I'm not in my cage, he's likely to think I've perished from hunger. If he thinks I've perished, he won't have any reason to feed me. Chapter 28. Obi-Wan Kenobi would have been proud. Obie didn't know what to do. Well, that's not quite true. She knew what to do, she just didn't know how to do it. She had to get back into her cage before Tad arrived in Rachel's bedroom to feed her. But how was she going to do that? Sugar Smacks and Sweetie Smoochkins, having recovered from the shock of hearing Tad scream, had returned to the kitchen. They were now hovering just outside Obie's hiding place, with fierce, determined looks on their faces, waiting for Obie to step out into the kitchen. As Obie frantically tried to think of a way to get past the cats, her eye fell upon the toy jack that lay on the dusty crevice floor. The metal jack had 4 spiky prongs and looked more like a weapon than a toy. This gave Obie an idea. She picked up the jack and focused her eyes on Sweetie Smoochkins. The cat was peering into the crevice, trying to see what Obie was doing. Using her front paws, Obie lifted the jack above her head. She was all set to hurl it into Sweetie Smoochkin's face when another thought occurred to her. If I throw this jack at Sweetie Smoochkin's, it's going to really hurt. It might even poke out her eye. It's also going to get Sweetie Smoochkins really mad. She'll be more determined than ever to catch me and tear me limb from limb, and then I'll never get back to my cage. With a heavy sigh, Obie set the jack down on the floor beside the rubber ball. Obie stared at the ball, remembering something. Once, while in her gerbil mobile, she had seen Betsy and Susie, the human twins, Betsy and Susie, that is, not the goldfish, playing with the cats in the TV room. The girls kept tossing a small rubber mouse across the room. Every time one of them flung the rubber mouse, the cats chased after it, which caused the 2 girls to shriek with delight. Could such a thing work with a small rubber ball? There was only one way to find out. Obie picked up the rubber ball and took a step back so she was all but invisible in the shadows. She didn't want Sweetie Smoochkins to see what she was about to do. "Obie, I'm coming out," shouted Obie. "Ready or not, here I come." Obie drew back her paw and flung the ball with all her might. She tossed the ball in such a way that it arched high into the air, right over the heads of Sweetie Smoochkins and Sugar Smacks. It worked. Both cats fell for the trick. Sweetie Smoochkins reared up on her hind legs and tried to swat the ball with her front paws before it bounced across the kitchen floor. Sweetie Smoochkins and Sugar Smacks took off after it. With no cat guarding the entrance of the crevice, Obie dashed out. She made a beeline for the hallway. She was nearly there when Honeybuns appeared in the doorway. Obie froze in her tracks. "Going somewhere?" asked Honeybuns with an amused grin. "I need to get back to my cage," said Obie. "I don't think so," said Honeybuns. "Oh, I think so," replied Obie. The little gerbil had never spoken in such a brave, bold, defiant manner to one of the cats before. Never. Blinking, Honeybuns stared at Obie with wide, astonished eyes. To be honest, Obie was just as astounded as the cat to hear herself speak this way. "I don't think so," Honeybuns said again, as if she thought she had been hearing things. "I think so," repeated Obie, just as defiantly as before. And then Obie did something even more shocking. She bent her knees and leaped up into the air, high above Honeybuns' head. While in the air, Obie did not 1, not 2, but 3 spectacular somersaults. She landed on the hallway carpet on the other side of Honeybuns. It was a move right out of a Star Wars movie. Obi-Wan Kenobi, that fearless, clever, resourceful Jedi Knight, would have been so proud of Obie. Obie, the Jedi Gerbil. Oh, if only Obie had been armed with a lightsaber, she could have lopped off Honeybuns' head while she was in midair. Not that Obie would have done such a thing. She wasn't that kind of gerbil. You never saw a more astounded and dumbfounded-looking cat. Honeybuns just stood in the doorway, looking absolutely flabbergasted at Obie. As much as Obie would have liked to stay and savor the moment, she had a cage to get back to. She took off, scurrying down the hallway toward the stairs that led up to the second floor. Obie was all set to start hopping up the stairs when, upon reaching the foot of the stairs, she glanced upward and halted. Tad was nearly at the top step. Even if Obie hopped up the steps 2 at a time, there was no way she would be able to catch the boy, let alone pass him. Behind her, Obie heard galloping footsteps. She glanced back and saw Sweetie Smoochkins, Honeybuns, and Sugar Smacks sprinting toward her, their eyes gleaming with fury. Obie quickly glanced about, trying to figure out what to do. Suddenly, it dawned on her that she was standing right in front of the old grandfather clock, where Mr. Dickens had told her there was an entrance to the secret passageway. But even if Obie were to escape into the secret passageway, she still would never be able to get back to her cage before Tad. Unless, of course, she created a diversion. Chapter 29, The Diversion. The diversion, Obie realized, would have to be good and loud, really good and loud. Otherwise, Tad, with those darn earphones over his ears, would never hear it. Obie spun about and faced the cats. She threw her front paws up into the air, the way she had once seen a human bank robber on TV do after he'd been nabbed red-handed by the police. Obie even cried out, "I give up!" The cats dashed up to Obie and stopped. They quickly formed a circle around her. "Well, it's about time you came to your senses," said Sweetie Smoochkins. "You better not try any more tricks," growled Honeybuns. "So who gets me?" asked Obie, glancing from one cat to the other. "What do you mean, who gets you?" asked Sugar Smacks. "Well, there are 3 of you and just 1 of me," replied Obie. "I'm not very big. Plus, don't forget, I haven't eaten a decent meal in days. I'm not the plump, tender little gerbil I once was. Even so, I bet I'm still a pretty scrumptious meal. You're not really going to share me, are you?" Sweetie Smoochkins flicked her eyes first at Honeybuns, then at Sugar Smacks. "Fuzzball has a point," she said. "Well, I just assumed that I'd get Obie," said Honeybun. "Well, you assumed wrong," said Sweetie Smoochkins. "Hey, I'm the only one who ever plays with the gerbil," said Sugar Smacks. "She's mine." "No, mine," declared Honeybuns, and hissed at Sugar Smacks. Sugar Smacks hissed right back at Honeybuns. Sweetie Smoochkins, meanwhile, made a move toward Obie. Honeybuns, seeing this, hissed and stepped in front of the other cat. Sweetie Smoochkins hissed right back and took a swipe at Honeybun's face with her paw. Just as Obie had hoped, a fight broke out. A huge, ugly, loud fight with lots of hissing. Obie glanced up the stairs. Tad had reached the top step. He was just about to disappear down the upstairs hallway when, even with earphones covering his ears, he heard the cats hissing and fighting. "Hey, what's going on down there?" cried Tad, frowning as he gazed quizzically down the staircase. The cats kept right on fighting. With the bag of gerbil food in one hand and the box of yogurt puffballs in the other, Tad came hurrying down the stairs. "Hey, hey, hey," he cried. "No fighting! Stop at this instant, you cats!" Obie waited for just the right moment. Then, when no one was paying any attention to her, she quietly slipped under the old grandfather clock and squeezed into the hole that led into the secret passageway. "Hey, where did Fuzzball go?" she heard Sweetie Smoochkins blurt out. "She was just here a second ago," said Sugar Smacks. "She couldn't have vanished," said Honeybuns. "This is all your fault," declared Sweetie Smoochkins. "My fault," cried Honeybuns. And with that, the fight erupted again. "Hey, you cats, stop it," bellowed Tad. Obie chuckled to herself as she made her way through the darkened passageway. Obie, Jedi Gerbil, strikes again. Her eyes were just beginning to adjust to the dim light when up ahead she spied a mysterious small smudge. Obie couldn't make out what it was. Whatever it was right in the middle of the secret passageway. As Obie got closer, she saw that the smudge was a mouse, an old, hunched-over mouse. Why, it was old Mr. Dickens. He stood in the passageway, blocking Obie's path. In his paws, he held a plastic fork that was missing 2 of its prongs. "Get out of my way, Mr. Dickens," said Obie. The old mouse shook his head. "I've got to save you, kid. I can't let you go back to them." "I said get out of my way." "You're making a mistake, kid." "I don't want to hurt you, Mr. Dickens. Now please, get out of my way." But the old mouse did not budge. "You're a rodent, not a human," he cried. "You don't belong with them." Obie squatted and got ready to charge. The old mouse saw this and braced himself for Obie's attack. He bent his legs and aimed the prongs of his plastic fork toward Obie like it was a spear. Head lowered, Obie rushed forward. She plowed into Mr. Dickens, easily tossing him aside. As the old mouse fell down onto the dusty floorboard, Obie heard a loud, horrible crack. The sound terrified Obie. Oh no, she had broken poor old Mr. Dickens' back. As it turned out, it wasn't poor old Mr. Dickens' back that had snapped in two. It was the plastic fork. Mr. Dickens sat on the floor, holding his broken plastic fork, looking dazed and gasping for breath. Obie felt terrible that she had knocked over an old, crippled mouse. She leaned down and helped Mr. Dickens back up onto his feet. "Sorry, Mr. Dickens, but you wouldn't let me pass. Don't go, Obie," cried the old mouse, sounding desperate as Obie turned to leave. "You're making a mistake, a big mistake. She doesn't love you." Obie stopped and swung around. She was fuming mad. "Yes, I made a big mistake," she said. "My mistake was that I let myself believe that Rachel didn't love me. But she does love me. And I think you know that, Mr. Dickens. You spy on us all the time. You see how she treats me and you can't stand it. You're just a miserable old mouse with a shriveled up heart who doesn't know how to love. You just know how to hate. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Dickens, but I don't hate Rachel or any of the Armstrongs, and I'm not going to end up like you." Before Mr. Dickens could say a word, Obie turned and continued down the dark passageway. She had to really hustle now. Mr. Dickens had caused her to lose valuable time. By this point, Tad had surely settled the cat's fight and was on his way up the stairs to Rachel's bedroom. Anxious to get back to her cage before Tad, Obie broke into a run. But it was very dark inside the secret passageway, and Obie was not at all familiar with where she was going. It seemed like she should have come to the hole that led into Rachel's bedroom, but she didn't see any little opening with light peeping from it. Where was it? Obie ran faster. Finally, she spotted the exit. Quickly, Obie squeezed herself through. As she stepped out of the secret passageway, Obie stopped and stared. This wasn't Rachel's bedroom. She had overshot her mark. She was in Craig's dimly lit bedroom. There was no way to go back into the secret passageway and retrace her steps. Obie would just have to pass through Craig's bedroom to get back to her cage. Boa the corn snake was the first to spot Obie. He was in his aquarium on Craig's desk. As Obie dashed across the carpet, the snake called out in his deep, melodious, sing-songy voice, "Boa, Obie, Boa, Obie, Boa, Obie." Jose, the tarantula, whose aquarium sat beside Boa's, was in a tizzy. He sprang about on the sand that covered the bottom of his aquarium and cried, "Senorita Obie, there she goes, there she goes. Don't just lie there, Boa. Go get her." Obie heard a loud thunk as the snake's reptilian head banged against the glass aquarium. "The screen, you dimwit, the screen, not the glass," shouted Jose, groaning in exasperation. "You were supposed to go through the screen on top of your cage. Unbelievable. The incompetence I've got to deal with." "Hey, Obie," called Boa. "What's the big rush?" Without slowing down, Obie waved a paw at Boa and Jose and called out, "Sorry, guys. Gotta run." "Obie, don't go," Boa called. "Stay. We're your pals, Boa and Jose. You know, the boa constrictor and the spider." "Spider?" roared Jose indignantly, hopping up and down. "I'm not a spider. Can't you get that through your thick skull? I'm a tarantula. A tarantula." Craig's bedroom door was shut. Obie dropped down to her stomach and squeezed under the door. Then she sprang up and ran down the upstairs hallway toward Rachel's bedroom. She was nearly there when, farther down the hallway, Tad appeared, coming up the stairs. He was carrying Obie's bag of gerbil food, the box of yogurt puffs, and, incredibly, the 3 cats. Apparently, Tad's way of brokering peace with the cats was to cuddle them in his arms. Obie rolled her eyes and dashed into Rachel's bedroom. The last chapter, chapter 30, Home from Vacation. Obie ran to Rachel's dresser, scrambled up the lamp cord, hopped across the top of the dresser, pulled open her cage door, leaped into her cage, then snapped the cage door shut with the end of her tail, just as Tad walked into Rachel's bedroom. Exhausted, her heart hammering, Obie flopped down onto the mound of cedar shavings that she had built to fool the cats into thinking she was underneath it, sleeping. Tad, still cradling the cats in his arms, walked quickly over to the dresser and gazed into Obie's cage. "Thank God, you're still alive," he cried, sounding truly glad and relieved. The cats, on the other hand, did not look glad, not one bit. They scowled and hissed at Obie. Honeybuns even swiped her paw in Obie's direction. Tad stared at the cats. He looked shocked, even disgusted. "What is your problem?" he asked them. "This poor little critter hasn't had any food or water for the past week, and this is how you act? Just for that, from here on out, I'm feeding Obie before I feed any of you. Now get out of here." Tad dropped the cats ignominiously onto the floor. The cats, being cats, landed on their feet. They stared in astonishment at Tad. Clearly, they could not believe this was really happening to them. "Go on, you heard what I said," cried Tad, glaring at the cats. "Beat it." He stamped his foot to show he meant business. The cats, frightened, took off, scampering out of Rachel's bedroom. Tad turned and peered kindly down at Obie. From the box of yogurt puffballs, he withdrew a puffball, a red one. He opened Obie's cage door and held the puffball on the palm of his big hand. "Here you go, little fella," he said tenderly. Obie got up and shyly stepped over to Tad's palm and nibbled on the puffball. It felt so weird to eat out of a teenage boy's hand, but wow, did that yogurt puffball taste scrumptious. "It was the strangest thing, Obie," said Tad, talking to Obie as if she was a human. "I found a note that Rachel had written. It was in my CD player. I have no idea how it got there. It was like, a miracle." Obie, chewing, gazed up at Tad with the most innocent-looking expression on her face. It was as if her face said, "Gee, I wonder how that could have happened." Tad was true to his word. From that day onward, whether it was morning or evening, he fed Obie before he fed the cats, or, for that matter, any of the other pets in the Armstrong household. Obie did not leave her cage after that morning. She had no reason to. Thanks to Tad, she now had plenty of food and water. In fact, Tad had a tendency to overfeed the little gerbil, but that was okay. Too much food was better than no food at all. Besides, Obie just ate what she needed, never stuffing herself. In the days that followed, Obie went back to her old routine. She ran on her exercise wheel. She went back to taking her late morning naps. Fortunately, she no longer had any more nightmares. She even took time out of her day to watch the squirrel, that wacko trapeze artist, zip back and forth across the telephone and electrical wires. One time, the squirrel happened to glance over at Rachel's bedroom window and spotted Obie inside her cage. He scurried up the slanted roof to the window. "I see they've got you locked up again," he said. Obie decided to have a little fun. She couldn't resist. "Me? Locked up?" She scoffed with a mischievous look in her eyes. "They haven't built a cage yet that can hold me." And just to show the squirrel, she pushed open her cage door. Well, that did it for the squirrel. His eyes bugged out, his jaw dropped open, and he fled. Just like old times, Obie still had the occasional feline visitor. Sweetie Smoochkins, Honeybuns, and Sugar Smacks all paid visits. Sweetie Smoochkins demanded to know how on earth Obie, the little fuzzball, had escaped from the cats that morning in the downstairs hallway. It was as if she had simply vanished and then magically reappeared in her cage. Honeybuns vowed to get revenge. Sugar Smacks begged Obie to play their game again. "Oh, come on, don't be a wet blanket," she said, as she wiggled her paw in between the bars of Obie's cage. "Touch my paw." Obie kindly but firmly refused. And that was something that was very different about the little gerbil. Before discovering Rachel's note, Obie would never have said no to the cats if they wanted to do something, but Obie didn't. She would have been much too frightened. But food wasn't the only thing Obie had gained during the Armstrongs' absence. She had gained confidence in herself, the confidence to be strong and firm, and, if need be, to say no. Late one morning, a few days later, Obie was on her exercise wheel, running, when outside the house she heard the thunk of a human mobile door slam shut. Obie thought nothing of it. She was always hearing a human mobile door slam in the neighborhood. But then she heard another door slam outside the house, and she realized that the noise was much closer than she'd at first thought. Indeed, it sounded like it was in the Armstrongs' driveway. Obie leaped off her exercise wheel and scrambled up the tube to her bedroom tower. What she saw when she peered out the domed plastic skylight filled Obie's heart with tremendous joy. The Armstrongs were home, back from their vacation, and there, down below, was Rachel, her adopted mother, standing with the rest of her family in the driveway, waiting impatiently for her father to open the house. "Come on, Dad, hurry," Rachel was saying. "I need to see Obie." Downstairs, Obie heard a key turn in the kitchen door. Then she heard Matt bark in the TV room. Then she heard the kitchen door open. Then the cats began to meow. Then she heard her adopted mother's voice cry out, "Hey, Dad, look, my CDs. You left them on the kitchen table." And then Obie heard the sweetest sound of all, footsteps urgently tearing up the stairs to the bedroom hallway. A moment later, Rachel, tanned and wearing a brand new t-shirt that said Cape Cod across the front, hurried into the bedroom. She looked absolutely delighted to see Obie. "Hey, Obie, I'm back," she cried as she tapped the top of Obie's domed bedroom skylight. "See what I've got for you?" She held up a small white bag. Obie, thrilled, raced down to her living room. Rachel opened the cage door and reached into Obie's cage. The girl held out her hand, palm up, fingers outstretched, so Obie could step aboard, which Obie was only too happy to do. Rachel brought Obie out of her cage. She set the little gerbil down on the bedroom floor, and then she herself sat down on the carpet. "Look what I brought back for you," Rachel said. She stuck her hand into the small white bag and pulled out some postcards. "These are all the places we went to on our vacation." Rachel held up one of the postcards for Obie to see. It showed a crowded beach by the ocean. 4 words arched like a rainbow across the dazzling blue summer sky. "Greetings from Cape Cod." The next postcard Rachel held up for Obie to see was from Maine. It showed a photo of a huge red lobster. The third postcard was from New Hampshire. It showed a girl in a 2-piece bathing suit water skiing behind a motorboard on a lake. The last postcard was from Vermont. It showed a bunch of cows standing about in a lush green meadow. "Thank you so much," Obie wanted to say to her adopted mother. "Here's what I thought we could do with them," said Rachel. She sprang to her feet and placed the postcards around Obie's cage like she was planting flowers. She stuck the bottom edges of the postcards in the tight space between the bars at the base of Obie's cage. She inserted each postcard so that the picture side faced into her cage, so Obie would be able to see the photos when she was in her living room. "Cool, huh? Now you have pictures to look at, you lucky stiff," said Rachel cheerfully as she plopped back down onto the floor. But that wasn't what Obie was thinking. She was thinking what a nifty fence the postcards would make. Now, Sugar Smacks, Honeybuns, and Sweetie Smoochkins would no longer be able to stick their paws in between the bars of Obie's cage. "Look what else I got for you," said Rachel. From the little white bag, she pulled out a small packaged item. "Cheddar cheese from Vermont," she cried, unwrapping the paper that was around the small chunk of cheese. "I got it at an old country store. Oh, Obie, I missed you so much." "And I missed you so much too," Obie wanted to desperately tell her adopted mother. "You poor thing," said Rachel. "I bet you've been bored stiff while I've been on vacation, haven't you?" "If you only knew," thought Obie. Rachel reached over and lovingly stroked Obie on top of her furry head. As the girl did this, Obie had the distinct feeling that the two of them were being secretly watched. Obie couldn't be absolutely sure, of course, but she was nearly certain that a small creature peeking out through a little hole in the bedroom wall near the clothes closet was closely observing them. That night, while the Armstrongs were all in their beds, sound asleep, Obie stole out of her cage. In her mouth, she carried one of the gifts that Rachel had brought back from her vacation for Obie, the chunk of cheddar cheese. The first thing Obie had done after Rachel returned the gerbil to her cage was to set the cheese aside near her refrigerator. As tempted as Obie was to gobble it up, she had not touched the cheese. Now, hurrying across the floor of Rachel's darkened bedroom, Obie quietly stepped out into the upstairs hallway. The hallway was lit by the soft glow of a nightlight plugged into an electric socket on the wall. The nightlight lit the way for Obie as she made her way down the hallway to the steps that led up to the attic door. She began hopping up the stairs. At the top step, Obie crawled underneath the attic door. She trotted across the very dark attic to where the opening of the secret passageway was located, behind the pair of ski boots. She set the piece of cheese down on the old floorboards. "Mr. Dickens," whispered Obie, "are you here?" There was no answer, but Obie could have sworn she saw the small silhouette of a mouse disappear behind the dark shape of an old wicker basket. "I brought you something, Mr. Dickens," said Obie. "Cheddar cheese, your absolute favorite." Obie waited, but the old mouse did not respond. "I'll leave it for you," said Obie. "You can eat it whenever you feel like it." Obie turned and started for the attic door. She had gone only a few steps when behind her a voice suddenly spoke, that of an old mouse. "Thank you, Obie." Obie swung about. In the bright moonlight that was slipping through the small attic window, she saw the little, hunched-over form of old Mr. Dickens limp out from behind the basket. He looked so sad and alone. It must be hard, Obie thought, to have lost your entire family. Had that not happened, Obie wondered, would Mr. Dickens be a different mouse today? A kinder, less hateful mouse? As Obie and Mr. Dickens gazed at each other, Obie remembered how the old mouse had fed her one of the cookies that Tad had dropped in the bedroom hallway. This in turn made Obie wonder about something else. When the old mouse said he had caused Tad to drop the cookies in the hallway, right in front of Rachel's bedroom doorway, had he done it so the boy might look over and see Obie and realize he needed to feed her? Or had the old mouse done it simply to get himself a cookie? Obie started to open her mouth to ask, but then changed her mind. No, she told herself, it's better I don't find out. If he did do it just to get himself a cookie, it's better not to know. I'd rather think the best of the old mouse and leave it at that, she said to herself. She quietly turned and left. Back in her cage, Obie made herself comfy up in her bedroom. As she lay nestled in the fresh, fragrant cedar shavings, in addition to everything else, Rachel had cleaned Obie's cage that afternoon. Obie thought about her big secrets, all three of them. Well, true, they weren't really secrets anymore. Mr. Dickens, after all, knew that Obie knew how to read. And the old mouse also knew, as did the cats and the other pets in the Armstrong household, not to mention that nutty squirrel, that Obie could leave her cage at will. And the last secret, the secret passageway, wasn't really Obie's secret anymore. It was old Mr. Dickens. Obie suddenly felt herself growing drowsy. She closed her eyes, and as she drifted off to sleep, she thought how lucky she was to be loved, and how nice it was to have three secrets, even though they weren't really secrets, and how handy they would come in for any future adventures. Little did Obie know that one was about to happen, sooner than she would ever dream. That's the end of our book, Obie, Gerbil on the Loose. I hope you've enjoyed the book. I enjoyed reading it with you over these past weeks. I'll talk with you again in the future, and we'll read some more books. Bye-bye.